All right, I have some breaking news that I don't actually have details on because it's such breaking news. But it does remind me of something. There has been a second plane crash in the United States.
Oh, yeah, I just saw that. Yeah, in Philadelphia. It just happened like a few hours ago.
Yeah.
Hot off the presses. I wonder if this is also another DEI plane crash like the one in Washington.
Probably. Well, they just finally... I haven't been hearing much about their DEI fires in California, which is the punishment for California being woke and gay.
Yeah.
I think
soy.
Yeah, and said a little soy.
Oh man,
about 20% soy.
About help.
You're joking, but that's probably like a WhatsApp chain message right now. Like California is being burned because of all the gay liberals.
The chief firefighter is a lesbian, so they were on that.
Oh fuck!
They were on that. Yeah.
They fucked. Yeah. God damn.
Mm-hmm. And it is funny because they, as this was happening, they were like, oh yeah, well, it's because of the woke that they can't do anything about this or whatever. Because the chief firefighter was a lesbian, so it kind of lined up. And at the same time, though, like, she was very qualified.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I forget the position.
That's like the thing.
Trump was appointing someone to a position that he had no experience for, but he did have, like, a decent history of sexual assault.
Was it Kash Patel? No,
you're talking about Pete Hegseth, who was, like, allegedly, a serial assaulter of women. And
is that alleged?
No, well, it's never been proven in courts. So... The thing is that if it's not proven in a court of law, it's just legally.
You still gotta say alleged? Damn. Okay,
yeah, because of course then he could get sued for like libel or slander or whatever.
Okay. Allegedly.
But like allegedly, he's an abuser of women, even according allegedly to his own mother. But he is at least. I mean, you can't really say this is like you don't really need to say allegedly as much, but I'll just say it anyway. Allegedly, he's also a drunk.
Yeah. And also he did fully admit that, he was sleeping or knocking up another woman, I think, while his wife was either pregnant or just had his kid.
Yeah, he's a
very Christian guy.
He's allegedly a abuser of women, allegedly a serial cheater, allegedly a raging alcoholic.
Yeah.
So let's see how this guy does.
Yeah.
I mean I think the United States has had people like that before in that position, so who knows what'll change.
Honestly, yeah.
What is funny is that the whole Biden foreign policy state, who are like Ivy League educated, who all had like all of this alleged experience, were the architects of the Gaza genocide.
Yeah.
They made so much noise about how they're working around the clock for a ceasefire. And some fucking yokel real estate guy that Trump knew from New York was able to like secure an ostensible ceasefire in under a week.
Well, he probably went over there with that good New York weed as opposed to that Scranton dirt.
So we do have some leaks about that. So he was sent to visit Israel, or should I say, isn't real, and it was like, oh, I want to meet with Netanyahu, and the guys were like, well, you can't. It's the Sabbath. And like this real estate guy was like, he's fucking meeting with me right now.
Yeah.
Like I think the whole Trump thing is that even if the ceasefire doesn't stand, it is still a huge embarrassment for Biden because like of course he's responsible for this and an active participant in this genocide. But of course the whole messaging was the entire time it's like, oh, we can't control Israel.
No.
And this just totally brings home and puts paid to that. Is that like Israel is an American client state, and all the United States needed to do was yank the leash.
Yeah.
Because of course you have the precedent of the Israeli bombardment of Beirut during the Lebanese Civil War in I forget, it was like one of the very early 80s, and Reagan fucking called up what was the Israeli prime the first Likudnik PM Begin. And he literally said, this is another Holocaust. You are going to stop bombardment right now, or I'm gonna rethink your relationship. And when Begin said no, Reagan hung up. And then like 20 minutes later, Begin calls back begging for to take him back. Yeah. Like
That's
like,
such a...
So
like Israel exists and performs the actions that it does by the grace of the United States of America.
And the funny thing is, like, yeah, Biden likes to position it like they are just friends or kind of thing. Like they or the Democrats like want to position it as like they're just Israel's friends of the U.S.
Yeah.
Like, no, Israel exists like because of the U.S. and to like they exist to further each other's interests. Actually, like like they test a lot of the shit that they eventually apply on the New York surveillance state in Israel. Isn't real in fucking Palestine.
Yeah, like the it's like the not Foucault's boomerang, because I think that
isn't it Foucault's boomerang?
No, so the thing is that the guy who first came up with that theory was Aimé Césaire.
Césaire.
Yeah.
Aimé Césaire. Oh shit!
Yeah.
He actually came up with that first.
Yeah.
I gotta read that book. Damn.
I don't know if it came up in a book, but he was the one to kind of theorize that, like the colonial boomerang.
Yeah.
So Israel is
yeah.
Israel is the United States' like hotbed of like of the security state.
You can test all security and military operations when you have a population that is captured, can't leave, and is subject to anything you want to do with no repercussions.
Yeah.
And it's actually like terrifying. Like, I know this stuff has happened before. I think it happened in was it Vietnam, where they would drop speakers that would play sounds that would like sound like ghosts or something.
Okay, but okay, that's a little.
So that's an old thing. But now they're flying drones around in Israel and in Palestine, where there are always drones. The whirring of drones is constant, and they're flying the drones low and playing sounds of like babies crying is one of them.
Really?
And also like women and mothers screaming for help and screaming for family members, which you need to note were recorded in Palestine from real people crying and screaming for their family members.
Holy
and
shit.
As people run out to try to help, it guns them down and then flies away. Which is one of the more haunting things that I've heard recently. It was actually like pretty terrifying. And like when you have something like that, like there is no justification. Like the fact that that got out and leaked.
Yeah.
Like, if everyone heard that, like, the world would have changed the next day.
Yeah.
Not the United States.
Well, those guys, you have to understand, they love Israel more than their own families.
That's true.
At least in the government. But, like, if the population heard that, like, even fucking Biden might have had to do something. Because you can't... They've done everything, but shit like that is too personal.
But the thing is that, like... We've already seen like unending horror for 15 months, and in some ways nothing changed
from the.
And I think no matter what fresh horrors that you are witness to, the United States was still implacable because, like, you know, we saw stuff that like people like there was like a majority of opinion that at least even if it wasn't like sympathetic, there were a majority of American opinions even if they weren't sympathetic entirely to Palestinians were in favor of a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Like, I think ultimately, the Biden administration just did not care.
Yeah.
Actually, no, not even did not care. Were like an active facilitator. They were an active participant in this.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, like, I don't really see how the Biden administration, like any new horror coming out of Gaza would have changed the Biden administration on that, especially as the genocide dragged on and like it started to like get maybe not pushed out of the news cycle, but like the initial brutality was covered a lot more, even if there was a lot of spin to it.
Yeah.
Whereas as the killing and the horrors went on, there was a lot more of a muting of it. Like, something I saw that was pretty heinous was at the turn of the new year, as we got closer to Trump's inauguration, saw a lot of American mainstream news outlets start publishing stuff about the Gaza death toll. But, like, I think it was, God, I can't remember which outlet it was, but they specifically said, oh, we filmed this footage in Gaza in, like, May. And this is how devastated it was.
Yeah.
And
like
it's
3 months in.
That like almost 6 months in.
Yeah.
So you see that and you're like, why are you now airing it? And it seemed to be at least because, at least this is my and some people's thoughts, Trump was coming in. So if Trump didn't at least try to end this in a ceasefire, would we have seen like a very strong media pivot to pin the Gaza genocide more on Trump than the person who was largely responsible for it, Joseph Robinette Biden?
Yeah. I absolutely think this because somehow everyone around me came out and said Biden finally got a ceasefire and now Trump is in.
Oh, interesting.
Everyone around me was saying that. And I, like, there are certain, I've been saying this recently with a bunch of things, but there are certain times where I'm not going to split hairs.
Yeah.
And I just sit there and I go like, okay, I'm glad there's a ceasefire. But that was a very specific thing. I'm not sure how that came out because I clearly didn't get that.
It kind of...
A lot of the details came out that made it seem much more suggestive of the fact that Trump got the ceasefire. And it seems like it's more of a... Maybe not a wholly accepted fact, but it seems a lot of people, including like mainstream media people, that it was more Trump and his transition team that got the ceasefire over Biden, even though, of course, Biden's campaign and his partisans would like to say otherwise. Like, it seems like Trump had a lot more sway in this, and I think in part because it was like, Trump actually cared more about it being on TV than Biden did.
Yeah, because Biden said this is the same deal they drew up last year.
Yeah, like...
And at which case, so what the fuck
And
happened?
they were just able to actually force it. The same way they were actually able to force them into a meeting.
Some previous red lines for Israel suddenly were no longer an issue.
Right.
And
Though,
why is that?
Let's be clear. What has happened since? Alright? So the ceasefire happened, and the next day, the New York Crimes was already posting articles saying Hamas has already taken Palestine back and is in full control. What does this do? Well, Israel's main war goal, as stated, which they failed all of their war goals, which was like getting the hostages back, making sure Hamas is not in charge. So they failed all of their war goals, but all the consent has been manufactured for like hating on Hamas. Now, I'm not like a Hamas lover, but you have to understand why it's there.
Yeah.
And it's there because of shit like this.
Yeah.
So Hamas is back in charge and all of that. What are they doing? They're manufacturing consent so that if Israel immediately goes back, that you can say, oh, it's because they're trying to stop Hamas coming back into power.
Right.
So it's a default reaction. And then Israel, what did they do? Immediately go back and keep doing their shit.
Yeah.
Like, and they've done it repeatedly since the ceasefire was made.
However,
like every other ceasefire with Israel, they're still bombing people. Initially, they wouldn't let people back into the north, and then I think they were forced to.
Yeah.
So there's progress,
so
but...
the ceasefire is like pretty much holding now. Like, there hasn't been a broad resumption of not hostilities, like of genocidal bombings.
Yeah, of the mass violence.
Of the mass violence. The mass violence has ended. Maybe there's still some petty violence, but like largely Israel has now been forced to cease, even if temporarily, their genocide. And of course, obviously, those war goals, like removing Hamas, saving the hostages, function, like, regardless of whether or not that was the intent, functioned as cover for 15 months of genocide.
Yeah.
So... Sorry, let me collect my thoughts here. Yeah, you mentioned about the New York Crimes kind of saying, like, oh, they're back in power. Pretty damning, at least to, like, Israel's propaganda. A lot of reports of Hamas virtually replenishing its ranks. I wonder why.
Yeah, what made people turn to Hamas in the first place?
Yeah.
And what would have happened that would make people turn radical against Israel and like be willing to fight and die for it? Maybe you should check out Oh my god, this was in the episode Skibidi Day, which is when we first covered Israel-Palestine, where we said this is how you make sure that people will continue joining and supporting Hamas in places like this, because it's a place that is fighting back.
Yeah, and like if you're a child born into this kind of like environment, like
if you see your sibling ripped to pieces,
and the only kind of force that you see that is fighting against that is Hamas. Fuck yeah, absolutely. Like I understand why they would want to join Hamas. Like if you're someone who's like experienced like several generations of your family bombed in one go, and you literally have nothing left. Yeah, like they're I don't know who said they're creating more Hamas members every time that they do these things, and it's such a it fucking sucks. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like on its surface, you're like, oh well, this is counterproductive, but that's besides the point, which was to kill as many Palestinians as possible,
and to take the land.
Yeah. But that, of course, first comes after.
Yeah. It's
after doing like.
You have to get rid of the people that are there if you want it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that was pretty insane that I was seeing earlier this week or maybe late last week was like a lot of footage of Yahya Sinwar, like before he died, strolling around Gaza in like the open air with nothing more than like some freaking robe over his head, like a blanket over his head, like he's fucking Ben Kenobi.
Yeah,
wait, really?
They actually kind of glazed him a bit. I can't lie.
No, like we saw we saw countless things of footage of him like not in tunnels, him walking through the ruins of Gaza with just like a blanket over his head to shield his face, moving from building to building in broad daylight, and like Israel never fucking found him. Like what the hell?
This is the Hamas spokesperson, right? Or like,
no, Yahya Sinwar was the leader of the. I don't know if he was leader of the Qassam brigades, but he was functionally head of the arm going of Hamas.
That is his Qassam
and he was in many ways also the architect of October 7th.
Right.
And then after the political leader of Hamas, I think, was killed by Israel in Iran, he was then kind of like internally elevated to general leader.
Yeah.
So. Like for a long time, like the Israel thing was like we're gonna get Yahya Sinwar, like the whole one of the whole big things of the war is we're gonna get him, and here he's walking around in broad daylight, in like the time before they killed him.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's insane. Like it just shows how like little control they actually had. There was one clip where it shows that he's even in a building that for a fact was previously cleared by Israeli soldiers because there was like Hebrew graffiti on the wall behind him in the shot.
Yeah, they were trying to draw him up as being like pathetic and evil, but instead, like I said, they glazed him earlier. The wrong term, absolutely. But like you look at it and it's like you're talking about this leader being like hiding and like evading you and like sacrificing people, and then you post all your pictures where he's on the front lines.
Yeah.
Like, he is there, doing his shit. You found him by accident because he was there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. If you think one layer deep, it's just the completely wrong message, really. But also, when it comes to... there's another dynamic with the American isolationism where they were bringing back all foreign aid. And then, naturally, they made exceptions for Israel and also Egypt, but, anything for, they made an exception for Israel.
On them. Maybe it's because Egypt is like, well, one, Egypt is like one of their big Arab partners, and I guess they're trying to buy them off to like kind of smooth things over about Gaza.
Maybe, honestly. I wouldn't be shocked. But there's I lost my train of thought. So one, when you have a war like this that is massively destructive to civilian areas, you are supposed to rebuild the civilian areas because that's how we defined war as working.
Yeah.
So there's a few things that have happened here. One is like people witnessing what has happened in Israel has kind of destroyed a lot of like classic what we think of as liberals right now, because we've seen that, like, all the things that we have the markets, but we do the right thing, and they're just clearly not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's really been ruptured. But also all the, like, war stuff that you're supposed to do. Like, the idea that we can do wars, but better, and, like, without ruining people's lives, that's also now just, I guess, out the window, really. Yeah. Because clearly that hasn't happened. And the last thing that I forgot to bring up earlier was the statistic for people that are killed, where they're like, oh, only 30% of people that were killed were combatants, or something like that. And the rest are, like, women and children. Well, guess what? When the war started, the median age was, like, 18.
Yeah.
Which means that 50% are children.
Yeah.
And if you split women and men in half, you end up with 75% women and children, which is exactly the ratio of people that they've killed, more or less. Maybe a couple percent off.
Yeah.
Which just means it has been purely indiscriminate killing.
Yeah.
Like, that is how that statistic gets made like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, wait. I blanked out there for a second. Like, when they say, like, combatants, also the thing is that, like, quote-unquote military-aged males, or just males in general, are often just blanket considered combatants.
Right.
So this is any male between the age
like
of,
16 and up, or whatever.
16 and up who are killed are considered, like, combatants often. Or, like, written off, especially in the Palestinian genocide in Gaza.
Yeah. Amazing.
But yeah, they made so I think that one, they said, okay, we're going to get rid of foreign aid. And the first thing I thought was, holy shit, what's this going to do to Israel? And then the nothing ever happens came through. And it won't change anything because there's an exception for Israel. But it also does mean that they're not going to rebuild Palestine at all for the Palestinians whose houses have been flattened and communities destroyed. It's not going to happen because there's going to be no foreign aid for them.
Yeah. Well,
it's just going to come from other sources if it happens. Like, I think Qatar has been talking about it, but of course, like, the Qatari economic minister recently said, like, well, why would we invest in building something if it's going to get blown up later? So yeah, there's whether or not that ceasefire holds. I think, of course, in a just world, Israel and the United States would be the ones rebuilding Gaza with their own, or being paid to rebuild, or they would be
funding it.
They would be funding the rebuilding of Gaza with their own money. But of course, you know, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think this might explain. So, before the war even started, it was very difficult to get goods into Gaza. And the only way you could is either through Israel, who weren't allowing anything, or through Egypt.
Yeah.
And this might explain why Egypt was part of the
deal.
Yeah. But it also explains why Israel wants to hold control of the Philadelphia corridor.
Yeah.
Because that's the border of Egypt and Gaza, and so
Yeah.
they still want to, like, essentially make sure that they're not allowed to rebuild anything, because I mean it's incredibly bad now, but like it was pretty bad before, like
they want to make sure that they control all 4 of the prison walls instead of all 3.
Exactly. Any like form of construction material was assumed to be like used to be making bombs for Hamas. Any form of like medicine is assumed to be used to be making like bombs for Hamas.
Yeah.
Any form of like toys was assumed to be making bombs. Like anything, they would essentially say Hamas can make. And this is why people think you can extract sugar from cookies to like make a chemical bomb or some shit.
Yeah,
some like chemically impossible shit. And that's how essentially that's the excuse they used to withhold aid from getting into Gaza in the first place. So hopefully this Philadelphia thing gets like, fuck that Philadelphia thing. Like, hopefully that's like
Philadelphia or
Philadelphia. Yeah, Philadelphia.
Sorry, we said Philadelphia, and I was like, are we back to the plains?
I was like, why is it even called Philadelphia? My bad. Yeah, Philadelphia. But yeah.
So I guess we pivot now, don't we?
Yeah.
I have a one-sentence story. We could do that.
Let's go.
Indonesia joins BRICS, and BRICS is now more than 50% of the world's population. I just want people to know this.
Multipolar bros were so back.
Because this applies to a lot of stories that I will be talking about, not only like in this episode, but in the future. Which is BRICS. We've covered it in our episode Bricked Up, which still one of our best names.
Yeah.
But it's essentially a broad coalition. It's not like a strict alliance, but it is like a vague coalition of people outside of that are doing like a trade coalition thing outside of America's sphere of influence, where they're like starting to not rely on dollarization and the American dollar to do their trades, which has led to like America having less influence. Now, if America was in their A game, like from let's go with like the 40s to the oh my god, I don't even know when they stopped. I don't think they ever did. But if they were back in their heyday, they would have instantly slaughtered everyone that did something that was against America's interests.
Oh yeah.
They can't do that anymore. Well, they like, not that they morally can't, but they seem to not be able to keep up to forcing the world to do everything they want to do. So having this coalition that's growing and now more than half of the world's population is rather interesting and something to keep an eye on. Will it continue or will it not? We'll just have to really see.
I personally hope it not only continues but succeeds. Like, for us to actually achieve anything, America must fall. Unfortunately, like America is one of the biggest obstacles for communism.
Yeah, but of course, I'm not under the illusions that once America is gone, it's a clear and straight path. No, I think obviously until like the absolute overthrow of capital, another capitalist hegemon will take its place. And I think sometimes there's like a lot of people who jerk off over BRICS, thinking that it's like some sort of like utopian alternative to the States. It's functionally just like in many ways a
replacement.
Its
not
fundamentals
but
are
it's like,
slightly better.
It in the sense of like it still continues capitalism.
Yeah.
It's still it's not going to be changing anything. It's just an attempt at making even some sort of small alternative to the US-led social political order. And who knows how that bears out. I mean, it's been a thing for a while. It's borne some fruit, but I think some of the more ambitious economic stuff that BRIC members have intimated at, I don't know if it's really going to pan out or work, because obviously, like, we don't know what the fuck's going to happen.
Yeah. I think you're definitely correct on a lot of that. The thing that would be a restriction is America's the power of the dollar is like used a lot to leverage a lot of like their relationships they have with other people, and if that's seen as inferior to, I don't know, the power of BRICS or China or something, they have a less of an opportunity to like go in smiling and bring in their bring in through the back door like some kind of like I don't know, build an imperialist post in some random country somewhere, and the less power they have to do those things, essentially like the U.S. has invested. I don't know if other countries are this invested in that. Like the U.S. like exists, is like they exist to prevent anything related to communism from springing up anywhere.
Yeah.
And so, anything that endangers like their economic system, then like that prevents them from like making that their primary focus is good for a lot of these random countries out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, BRICS may not save the world, like it may not make everything better than ever, but as long as America is the hegemon, nothing will get better at all.
Yeah,
guaranteed. So
speaking of nothing, sorry.
Yeah, so luckily, unluckily, America, as the hegemon, is not going to do anything to completely fuck up the dollarization of the entire world. Oh, wait. The tariffs are coming. And potentially even tomorrow, which would be rather interesting.
That is so crazy.
I think they've officially been delayed, but it's kind of tough to say what's going to happen when everything is random.
Yeah.
I would have expected them, I think he said they were going to be like 50% at some point. So I just wrote it in, 25% maximum.
Yeah.
I'd say in my brain, I thought he was just going to slap a 25% on everything. Oh no, wait, it was supposed to be 25 and I said 10. Right. I accidentally extrapolated the other direction.
Yeah.
Which is pretty insane. And you'll notice that Shrey and I talked briefly about how Ontario at one point tried to do a bunch of infrastructure projects, especially related to renewable energy and like electrical infrastructure, solar panels, wind farms, stuff like that. And what we said was that a certain amount of our materials had to come from within Canada, and specifically within Ontario as well. Mm-hmm. This got shut down by the the World Trade Organization, ITC, is that International Trade Commission?
Sounds right.
It sounds right, but don't quote me on that one. Yeah. I have ITC written down. And they essentially shut it down and said, you're not allowed to do this or else you just get like shut off of trade for the world and get like fucked. So we weren't allowed to
use our own materials?
You weren't allowed to enforce that the majority of production came from your own materials because the theory is that global markets are just better, so it has to happen.
That's a bit too national. Mm-hmm. It's a bit too...
It might help people. But if you want to develop your country, what you have to do is use programs to build up your production.
Yeah.
Here, this is not what's happening.
No.
Instead, we're just making everything more expensive. So I imagine everyone is going to go to the WTO and the ITC and say, hey, we have all of these trade agreements that guarantee that we have no like tariffs and all of that. So they're going to get hit with all the complaints. But who is supposed to crush people who complain? The U.S. Now it's going to be... who is supposed to try to do something and then get crushed? I'm fucking up all my language right now. The U.S. is the person who screws over people who try to change.
Right.
Now, the U.S. is trying to change, and we have to see what happens, because they built the institutions.
Yeah.
So are these global institutions just going to become abandoned? Are they not going to be able to be reinforced without the United States? And can America get away with this or not? Because they built the things to stop people from getting away with it when they were more impressive.
Yeah, I want the tariffs to... this is... Okay, so it definitely will be a bad thing for Canada if the tariffs do happen. Mm-hmm. And, like, as far as I know, it's, like, a sweeping tariff. Like, there's not a specific thing. But in a news report, he was saying like, "Oh, we have enough lumber. We don't need your lumber." I don't know if that's what I told him. We get it.
Not a lot of stuff around this is particularly coherent.
Right. And so I want but in some kind of like I don't know, low key maybe evil side of me, I want it to happen just to see.
Yeah. Don't worry, we've been on here, a couple of us, saying that we're like at least interested in what happens when you do protectionism as the extractor.
Yeah, and like I want to see what happens. And
I mean, the economy's probably both our economies are probably gonna shit the bed pretty quickly.
That's true, but this kind of like I don't know, like this kind of opens the door for like other like. For us to like to collaborate with some other people who we've had beef with before, right? Like Mexico and China. Speaking of China, okay, so this is the thing. Canada got 25%, Mexico got 25%, China got 10%.
Ooh.
If Canada had any sense. Like, Doug Ford was just talking about how the U.S. is a big brother to Canada. Like, this is just proof that the U.S. doesn't give a fuck about Canada.
Yeah.
like, if we had any sense, we would immediately lose this xenophobic Cold War fucking attitude that's like brewing in Ottawa and start reaching out to China about like wait, what the fuck? Like yeah.
So I figure they did their analysis on the Treatlerites and decided that China allows them to have all their like cheap treats.
Yeah.
And figured, okay, we can't slow that, so we have to like let China get away with something. But yeah, we should try to do something. But also, like half of America, half of states, their primary trading partners are Canada, which means half of the states are gonna get hit hard. This is an import tariff.
Yeah.
Which means the population of those states are the ones that are going to get fucked.
Yeah, that's true. Like, cause half the states is such a lot. Like, yeah. So tomorrow, like we're recording this the January 31st. Yeah, tomorrow maybe it'll happen. We'll see what happens. Like, go out. Stray recommends go out taking pictures of like price tags and shit, and we'll see. We can live through this together, experience this. It's such a new, like, I don't know. I don't know if this has happened in modern, like, I don't know, post, post World War II, where like this, like, sort of, just open face, like, trade, kind of like, I don't know, pull my dick out kind of move.
Yeah.
And
the nothing, I gotta say, it really hurts. The nothing ever happens is.
Yeah.
I've twisted my nothing ever happens ankle, you know?
Even when nothing ever happens, or even when something happens, nothing ever happens. Or I think even more important, even when nothing ever happens, there's a lot of things that happen. And speaking of nothing ever happened, the fucking poll switch. Or not switch. The polls closing.
Yeah.
Slightly.
Yeah, Trump has been scaring the hoes. And
so go ahead.
I think that a lot of the stuff that's happening in America, because people by and large are still fairly normal. And even the people who are like, oh, I'm apolitical, are still going to turn the news on and see them dropping Sieg Heils.
Yeah.
And women are going to see, like, abortion shit happening. People like getting taken away, people getting arrested, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it scares even the most apolitical normalist of people.
Right.
And Poilievre has been really going off where he was doing an interview where someone talked about, like, mentioned gender. And he said, I'm only aware of two, but the government should stay out of it. Which I think, did we talk about all the Hitler stuff in this episode, or was that the last one?
So, okay, I think when I first posted it, I thought he was being Hitlerian with that. Upon further reflection, it seems more that he's trying to have it both ways. Or he's still trying to be like, oh, there's only two genders, but at the same time being like, oh, well, the government shouldn't be, like, getting involved in that sort of thing.
Yeah. But in my opinion, you don't point that out when you're running to be the involved. Like, if you believe in that, it will be government involved.
Yeah, I think, like, the way the question was posed was, like, I don't know, these journalists gotta learn how to fucking play with these new age conservatives who want to be anti-journalism, because it's a fair question. Like, Trump just signed an executive order on this issue, and you have by and large aligned yourself with that, with at least like Trump, or and
he also hasn't shut up about gender in years.
Yeah,
like,
and so like if someone asks you like, are you planning on doing something similar? Like, it's a fair question, but then he kind of slides back to like, well, I'm more focused on the issues, but I only know of two genders, and if you know of more, please feel free to let me know. And like, I don't know. There's ways that like that could have been a bad moment for him, and I'm sad that it wasn't. Like, I feel like unfortunately he maneuvered his way out of it like a bit too easily. But yeah, that's a good point you bring up, because Canadians now there's the guy who is his sick out of the inauguration is best friends with the president of the United States, and like the first day on the job, he's signing executive orders saying there are two genders, signing, which by the way accidentally like made everyone female if you read into it, because it determines your sex is at contraception. Anyway, everyone starts as a woman, and then your genitals develop into whatever it is.
We're all queens on this fine day.
Clits are just innies.
Yeah.
Are just outies.
Shit.
Yeah.
Like literally, literally, it's the same tissue.
Yeah.
The clit is literally the same as the dickhead.
Yes. And he's signed executive orders. I don't know. Like, did he? There was one where it was like, oh, I don't know, what is this one anyway? And then someone told him like about it. He's like essentially doing all this shit that he said he was going to talk about that Canadians don't want in their own imagined sense of utopia that we have here. And so they're gonna start not wanting people who align with that. Danielle Smith, I don't know how much Alberta likes Danielle Smith, or Alberta likes that she's like doing a lot of like fucking tap dancing for Donald Trump.
Yeah, she's also like, even fucking r/Canada is stopping going to bat for people, and they are literally modded by Nazis.
Yeah.
Like unironic, self-proclaimed good, happy to be Nazis. Like that's who runs that, and even like, cause like Nazis have a nationalism.
Yeah.
And they're trying to like sell out our country, so even their like what should be their diehard fans are like hesitant to go to bat for them.
It's kind of wild, like that's how much Canadians don't like America, like in such a, or don't want to be known to be like Americans. Like some Canadians love Americans, some Canadians love what America's doing. But as soon as you introduce the notion of, oh, so you're like Americans, there's like, no, actually, no, we're a bit different. Like, we fuck the king of King Chuck or whatever his name is. But I find that very interesting. And I don't know. Do you guys think that's the reason the polls is like having this, because that plus Mark Carney having a bit of momentum now. Also, I think the at least Poilievre put too much focus on Justin Trudeau as the figurehead, or like the main reason for a lot of people's problems, that when he's not there anymore, a lot of the talking points don't hit as hard. And so people who say fuck Justin Trudeau not necessarily say fuck the Liberal Party, but then they see like this Bank of Canada guy, Bank of England guy talking a lot of like economic fluff. You're gonna start going for that, I think.
He sounds like Carney actually sounds like he makes sense. Yeah, which is good. And I'll contrast. Like I think we've really just had our first happening of the election. Yeah, where like something has clearly happened here. Trudeau dropped out. Carney is stepping up and looks like he's taking the reins. Yeah. And we now have Poilievre trying to navigate that, and he's done this entire thing based on failing upwards. And now it's, okay, you've been going after Trudeau the whole time. What do you have to say? Right. And he's just done weird social shit talking about gender, which people don't want to hear. Yeah. And then what's the next thing he did? He's doing a speech for the Holocaust Memorial thing, where I wrote this down. I'm just going to read what I wrote. He starts glazing Israel, calling like fascism socialist and communist, brings up October 7th, calling it unprovoked against innocent people, which, like, I'll bite innocent people involved. I'm not going to, like, I'll work with that, you know? But it is still provoked. Yeah. Calls it a Holocaust-like attack, and then starts talking about how we need to start like deporting criminal minorities. Yeah. And then like pops off against anti-racism and wokeness. That like woke shit. It It is absolutely insane. So he has had his first couple potential big moments to be normal and to show that he's like a serious candidate who is going to take things seriously now. And he dropped the ball both times. And Mark Carney has not done much.
No, actually,
but
no interviews.
He did his like Jon Stewart thing, and Jon Stewart just fed him his answers.
God, that is such a... I've never seen such a fucking planned... such a fucking planned, like...
Yeah, it was very softball.
It was definitely like a good showing for him, but I personally hated... it made me hate Jon Stewart, essentially.
Yeah. Carney didn't really get to say anything, but it was fine, and it came across as his first moment being a win.
Yeah.
And now, instead of Poilievre being associated as like an opponent to Trudeau, I think he's associated as the same side as Trump in the States, and that's scaring the hose a bit.
Yeah.
Who knows if it'll bear out, though?
Yeah, it's tough to say.
That's a good... But I think, since you have a good point on, like, now... that Trudeau's not there, you actually have to do something.
He's now the subject.
Yeah, like now there's no... And that's why he's trying to associate, like, it's too late now. He's trying to associate it, like, the economic problem, not just with Trudeau, but with the whole cabinet. And that's why he dropped that letter saying... Are you gonna...
Yeah, he dropped this deranged letter that said, Mark Carney, do you, like, swear to not have any cabinet ministers or members that were from Trudeau? What is that?
What the fuck is that? Like,
I will say, breaking news, Carney has promised to repeal the carbon tax.
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah.
This was just today.
What is people's problem with the carbon... What happened? What's
okay.
Oh my god.
Okay, next episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
We probably need a whole other thing.
Yeah. That, I mean, like, I'm actually not surprised. I'm not surprised. Like, and also we'll take away from the dog shit nickname that Poilievre tried to come up for Carney, carbon tax Carney, and carbon tax.
Yep. Yeah, he's immediately dodged the first name calling.
Yeah, and... It's just not. What did he have a name for Trudeau? It's just not hitting. Like, it comes off, at least to me, as like every time I hear carbon tax Carney, and now that there's breaking news that he said he's gonna cut the carbon tax, like, what does that mean? Like, people are gonna like hear that and be like, what are you talking about? And like, one of this guy's main thing is to cut the carbon tax. Yeah.
Yeah, Poilievre has been swinging as hard as he can, and he's catching nothing but air right now, and has stubbed his toe in the process. It's not looking good. Maybe he can land it and recover, but we've had our first happening, and it has immediately spiked the Liberals up and plummeted the Conservatives down. The Conservatives are still in the lead.
Yes.
The Conservatives are still in the lead, but it is like straight line up and straight line down, and then it's going to balance out a bit.
Yeah.
And then we'll reassess until we have another happening.
Yeah. And there's going to be an Ontario election. So that's actually interesting.
So the thing, like, the polls for Ontario have been all over the place because a new Ipsos poll came out that showed Tory support increasing to 50%. So we've seen a bunch of polls that kind of put things all over the place. So honestly, at this point, I'm like, we don't know what the fuck's going to happen in the election because the Ipsos poll that came out put the Tories at 50% in Ontario. Other polls were saying, like a Main Street poll was saying like 39%. It's all over. Like, I think this one is like, we don't fucking know.
Yeah, kind of like the Trump Kamala. Well, honestly, I can't believe they fumbled the bag so hard. Like, I keep thinking, but
yeah.
Well, at least like it. We still need the Liberals here to define. Like, we need to see if they define that they believe in something.
Yeah.
Because I do think that a big part of the state's problem was that the Democrats very clearly didn't believe in anything.
Yeah.
And even if it was fairly insane, at least like Trump was saying, I will do this. Also,
yeah,
one of the hardest political moves in history. is going through every single thing he said he would do in the campaign and signing every single bill back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
I don't... 50% of the bills probably don't make sense. Another 40% are probably actively bad, and then maybe 10% are accidentally good. This is still one of the coolest, like... That goes so hard.
And I think that just... Like, it's such... Okay, so even if you're right, some of them were considered to be unconstitutional and are getting challenged, but the fact that he just hit the ground running like that versus like Biden's like wishy-washy like method of like, oh, we'll get to it later kind of thing, like
we're gonna work on it, we'll get back with some reports, like
even Trudeau had like a lot of those moments where a lot of the campaign promises all of a sudden started fizzling out. And he was like, "Oh, we'll work on what is the voting thing? Ranked
electoral reform."
Yeah. We'll work on that. And then after he's resigned, he's saying, "Oh,
I
regret not doing." Fuck you.
Yeah.
Like when a real fucking like I don't know, like what
a failure.
When a real
what a failure of a politician. What a joke.
Yeah. He truly was just like a 10-year holdover. Now, we did get, like, some interesting stuff, but the interesting stuff, instead of being electoral reform, was legalizing weed. Still big, not electoral reform.
So, I think if you want to go with the theory that Canada's always, like, a decade behind American politics, you could really say that Trudeau is the Obama administration. Trudeau is, like, the Canadian equivalent of the Obama administration. Yeah. Superficial... maybe one or two domestic achievements that are meaningful, but no sweeping change. And soon to be, and is now a rotten edifice, soon to be replaced by like some like very right-wing Toryism.
Right.
Now, I sometimes resist those comparisons. Like, there's merit to them, but like sometimes I think it's a little too deterministic, a little too simplistic.
Yeah.
But like, if you want to like I very much think Trudeau aesthetically and politically is like an echo of Obama.
Yeah, aesthetically for sure, and like I don't know. The only difference is I don't know if I can think of much of a difference there, because man, he like Obama. I don't know if Obama did this where he would, because this is actually like I've never seen a world leader do this where people are protesting something and you show up to the protest and you protest alongside them. Like that was innovation, not gonna lie. Like the guy actually pulled up and said, "Yeah, fuck whoever's doing that," and like, and you're the guy, bro.
Just the still from SpongeBob. It's like wanted maniac, and it's SpongeBob looking for the maniac with his face on the wanted poster.
Yeah. You're the one with the biggest ability to make this change, and you're not supposed to be walking for visibility.
Yeah.
I think a big thing that's going to be seen as a massive failure of like liberalism. Once liberalism is done, it's going to be seen as a failure.
Yeah.
Until it's done, it's going to continue on wherever it sits on the spectrum.
Yeah.
But, like, I think there's going to be the big phase that we're going to look back on that will be, like, activism through awareness. Or, like, just being aware of something is the same as doing something. And I think that is going to age so incredibly poorly.
Yeah, 100%.
One of the worst innovation, or maybe not innovations, but one of the worst things to come out of like the 2010s.
Yeah.
In terms of like activism.
That's 100% right. I think and there's a whole group of people who believe that's also creeped into like leftist spaces as well. They're not really leftists. They're fucking liberals. Yeah.
I hate the word leftist. It's so mealy mouthed. It's so uncommittal.
I just want to call anyone who says leftist liberal.
Like you gotta declare. You you gotta actually say, where are you standing? Are you a liberal? Are you left liberal? Are you like, even progressive is kind of meaningless.
Yeah.
But progressive at this point basically means anywhere between left liberal and social democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you are left wing, and if you are kind of left wing, you need to be saying it with your chest.
Yeah.
I am a socialist. I am a communist.
Yeah.
Because anything else feels meaningless.
Yeah.
And it feels like you're playing it safe.
Yeah. There's a lot of people, you kind of see this in the media now, where just the very act that something is made by someone in a marginalized community, it's promoted as important.
Yeah.
And that's how we get fucking one of the worst reviewed movies to receive one of the most nominations of all time for Best Oscar. Because it's called Emilia Perez. Because
okay, but the thing is that it was made by like some white French dude who's like a famous French director.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the reason. Like they won the Cannes Award, and what's her name? Who did Barbie? Greta Gerwig. The reason that they awarded the Best Actress to all three of them was like she gave this whole, we wanted to award women, like it's a woman thing, like, and almost very little substance about.
Yeah, I would like. What you also saw Barbie too, right?
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It was an entertaining watch. Very politically shallow.
Yeah.
Very much liberal bourgeois feminism.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily wholly coherent. But it's still fun nonetheless.
Yeah.
I think I don't really have any sort of ill will towards it, apart from maybe saying like, oh, some of this is like further mystification of certain realities.
Yeah.
For women, but it was, still still a fun watch.
Yeah,
it wasn't. It was something that I watched, and at the end of it, I wasn't like, what the fuck did I just watch? This is a piece of shit. This was like, oh, this was funny. This was fun. It was a nice thing to see, and it gestures towards something a little bit more, like it tries to gesture towards more comprehensive stuff, and it doesn't like succeed, but
Yeah, when I watched it, I agree with Laurie. Like it was, so I watched it and it was like trying to process it politically, and then I look around. It's like a lot of like young women and old women, just like a lot of people just having fun, like dressed up for the movies and like just having a good time with the movies. And then they kind of hit me like, does it matter? Like,
stop having fun.
Yeah, like who cares about this like little political analysis? I say that doesn't really match up to like my expectations. Does it matter if people are having fun with it?
I mean, maybe you could like make an argument of like, this is like bad because it's mystification. Yeah, I keep throwing. I don't know. I might have been throwing around that term and not necessarily 100% knowing what it means, but it kind of like obfuscates. It, you could argue that it is obfuscating realities, but it's not like something that's necessarily unique to Barbie. No, it's just a thing that's part of the culture industry. Yeah,
and it's a result of kind of like what you said. I think you said it, Spencer, or maybe you said it, of like just the like that. Just you being something is engaging in some kind of radical activity. Whereas, and it kind of makes you more.
It kind of is like the boiling down to the most meaningless, tepid, potential interpretation of the phrase "the personal is political." I think.
Yeah.
Like I mean, the phrase in and of itself, there's a strong argument to be made for that, but I think a lot of the time, movies that try to make themselves seem like more important than they are take that idea, but like suck out anything sharp, or uncomfortable, or subversive from it.
Yeah. I got a question for you
guys.
Like
Barbie isn't going to be quoting Alexandra Kollontai.
No.
Me neither, I guess. No hate, but
well,
it's just...
one of our hosts says, I haven't read anything written by Alexandra Kollontai, but she, Bennett's read her. She's, arguably the founder of Marxist feminism.
Yeah. No, I got a question for you guys, because I don't watch many movies. It just is what it is. It's just not a thing I do much. I listen to music, but... So... I know there's the Mark Fisher angle on things of when you watch movies that have radical sentiments, they perform your anti-capitalism for you to stop you from truly subverting the system because you get that feeling out. And that's one way to say that these I almost said leftist. All this kind of more radical media. We'll go with it for now.
Yeah.
But all this explicitly leftist media, it doesn't actually help and may harm the movement.
Right.
But on the other hand, I was thinking, okay, does it matter? Because the left, we don't get control over our propaganda.
Yeah.
Really. So if someone drops something that is clear, like a movie that is clearly revolutionary at its core, and young people enjoy it and potentially carry that feeling forward. Was it Ants or A Bug's Life that's clearly just a workers' revolution?
One of both of them. Because they both came out
at
the same time.
They both came out at the same time.
I think it's A Bug's Life.
I think it's Ants.
Oh. Okay,
it's much more
all right.
Ants.
Yeah, you're probably right.
We'll move with this.
Yeah.
But if you see that as a kid and you're like, oh, that's a cool movie, that's a fun movie, I felt awesome. And as you grow up, you realize what that is. You might be also more likely because of that to learn more progressive politics. So my question is, do you guys think that having revolutionary media that acts as a kind of leftist propaganda that the left does not have any control over still, do you think it's a good thing or do you think it's a bad thing?
You know what? I feel like we haven't read enough Theodore Adorno to talk about this.
I believe you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't even know.
Maybe at first blush, I honestly say that probably is the case. But I've also read no theory on this topic, so I don't have any frame of reference to help build my opinion on.
Just make it up, man. That's what I do half the time.
Oh, God. Admittedly, I'm also half crashed out, so I'm not necessarily sure I can give the most coherent
That's fair.
or brain searching insights. But
I'll respect it.
There's definitely the whole thing of capitalism subsumes all critiques into it. Markets it back out. I think, any media that cosplays as revolutionary, as socialist, as communist, that isn't made by socialists and communists is not really going to work because it's fundamentally at least going to protect the status quo in some way or another through some means with the movie's production. Now, this is me just spitting here. I might revisit this opinion later. I'm also tired, so I'm not necessarily sure if I'm doing the brain to mouth thing clearly. But that's just kind of that's the thoughts at the moment.
Yeah, my uneducated answer, I think I'd agree with Liam, but for a different reason. I think even if we do get a movie commercial that has explicitly leftist messaging, hasn't been kind of ruined by the studio or diluted by the studio in some way, there is an echelon of people who work in the industry and critics who have the most obtuse or intentionally will refuse to talk about any movie that is, sorry to use that word, leftist in any way that is leftist, and their job is essentially to do the diluting before it comes to regular people.
There's also this is kind of aside the point, but I think there's also often this sort of censorship of left-wing ideologies. I've been reading a book recently with a friend And at one point it talks about Jack Reed, who... Do either of you know who he was?
Jack Reed or Jack Reed?
No, Jack Reed.
No.
So he was an American journalist, very well known for his book 10 Days That Shook the World, which is about the Bolshevik Revolution, which I think we should read at some point.
Yeah.
And he was a socialist. Mm-hmm. But this book describes him as simply a radical. Mm-hmm. And so, there's always the sort of language that will draw things away.
Yeah.
Like leftist maybe is a little not as gentle as radical, but it's one of those weasel words. And I think we talked about before we were recording this podcast about me not watching video essays as much anymore, in part because the market's saturated, but I think also as I've become more left-wing, the previous quote-unquote left-wing stuff I've been listening to seems so milquetoast, and I don't know if it's self-censorship. Even though I respect a lot of what FT Signifiers put out, every time he or anyone else I've listened to who uses the word leftist, it's not cringeworthy, it just sets me on, and not even sets me on edge, it's aggravating to hear. Because it's and I get FT having to do self-censorship, and I respect that, but at the same time it's always annoying to hear, because it's we can't just be honest. We can't be honest here. We can't put a name to it. It's maybe it's not a one-to-one, but it's almost like dancing around queerness. Where there's all the at least historically there's all these acronyms the whole old term for homosexuality is the love that dare not speak its name.
True.
And maybe they're not the exact same, but it's it can lead to these same frustrations where it's the taboos around actually saying the thing just
it prevents people
prevents people from looking into it, and it's meant to constrain it.
I think I mentioned at some point is that how liberals are always called the left. If someone reads something realizes, I seem to line myself up with what the left believes, they're more likely to look at liberals as opposed to the left.
It drives me insane when my dad does that.
I think,
when he refers to anything that's not liberal, but anything that is functionally centrist, but a little bit more social democratic as left. It's
I think for that reason alone, I agree with Liam that leftist should be a term tossed in the garbage.
So, I think this stuff first started to get lodged in my mind because there is a YouTube channel that I haven't watched in a while, but it's called Fab Socialism.
Oh yeah.
It's a black woman.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna attribute her to at least my thought process on my hatred of the word leftist to her, because she has a video title where it's I think she in the thumbnail or in the title she's what's the difference between leftism, progressivism, and one other word, and then in parentheses it's they're all bad.
Right. Yeah.
True. She says pretty much the same thing. It's these are you know what? I only saw that thumbnail and part of the video, so I am sorry for that. But even just seeing that in my head was she's right.
Yeah.
She's on to something.
Yeah, I like Fab Socialism. Check her out on YouTube.
Oh, you know her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't watched much of her recently, just because
me either.
I personally am more into the political stuff, and this is totally her purview. It's her own damn channel. Yeah. She also does some lifestyle stuff, which is totally fine with me, and she has the total right to do it. It's just that I'm not always into lifestyle stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm pretty deep in the YouTube pipeline where it's the videos I'm watching, if I'm gonna watch something political, it's gonna be Finnish Bolshevik, Best D Marks, or one of those guys who are clearly pretty deep in the well.
I think the only like straight up Marxist YouTube channel I've like paid attention to recently is Philosophy Cuck.
Never. Wow.
Although the channel is now called Jonas Chaika.
Oh.
Does he do the philosophy?
He does
videos?
the philosophy stuff. He also
Okay.
His profile photo is like a drawing I think his wife did of like an anime Charles Fournier.
I see him.
Nana, I would highly recommend him. Nana, I think you'd like him too. So far, he has two massive videos on the German Revolution. I think he might be a bit of a left comm, but he's still really good. He's still big into philosophy, and his German Revolution videos are very good. And he also did a pretty interesting video on fascism, and like talks about the history of Nazism, and also talks a little bit about the United States and Trumpism in there.
Nice. Right. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check this guy out.
We're an hour and 10 odd minutes into talking about other people's... I'm going to cut 7, don't worry.
Okay.
Where we're talking about other people to actually go watch. I'm going to say, like, for me, left is like an umbrella term. Don't worry, I can see the sound wave. I yell loud enough that we catch it. Nice. But for me, it's like an umbrella term that is for democratic socialists who think you can vote your way to socialism. Cool. Yeah. And then it's like socialists and communists. Right. I think for me, it's like that is the left.
Yeah.
And then you have the center, which is like social democrats. And then it ends at like where our NDP is.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, let's have the markets and like capital, but we will have social programs and welfare and all of that.
Yeah.
And then you go towards the right where it's like, okay, no, we're just going to do strike breaking.
Yeah.
And like, or further until you're Sieg Heiling twice on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, although I think like, for movies that like do have that explicit, socialist or communist, messaging do get diluted when they come out, I still think it's important that they're made, and in some rare cases, like sometimes the filmmaker will challenge. Well, the things the filmmaker says challenges people's perceptions of the movie. I think The Zone of Interest, one of my favorite movie from last year.
I still need to watch it.
Yeah, like I watched it, and yeah, like I don't know if you've heard about the comparisons to essentially what's happening now, but
yeah, I mean, when the director accepted the award, I mean, I think like seems more like a kind of moderate liberal sort of guy, but he also used the platform to like speak about Gaza.
Yeah, I think like exactly because when the movie came out, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say also because like the comparisons with Gaza, like on Twitter, the Zone of Interest is very much a shorthand of like liberal complicity. With the Gaza genocide.
Yeah, 100%. And so when I watched that, like that's what was in my head. And then you read or listen to like critics talk about it, and they only talk about it like it's only talking about Nazis essentially. Like there's no like they're actually like so obtuse on their analysis, and it's not until he came out and said what he said that people are actually publishing things that is like tying that to what's happening now. And you will see a similar thing for Parasite. What's his name? Boots Riley also did a movie, Sorry to Bother You. Like the people are the critics will be obtuse about it, but people recognize when they see, like in Parasite, like you recognize like you see the like if you're a worker, you see like the class differences, right? The class differences, and you know who you identify with despite what happens. And I think like that feeling is definitely possible still, and I think it's useful. So if you're a filmmaker or some shit, like still do that shit.
Yeah, I my favorite takes that I've heard people say about Parasite is one was a guy that I watched it with the first time who said it was a really crazy movie about like managing to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make it despite the circumstances. And I
did the
literally
man see the ending?
He did, and he thought the ending was he ended up working enough to buy the house. And I was like, I don't know if we watched the same movie.
The man didn't watch the final 2 minutes of the movie where it shows that he's like, oh yeah, this is just me fantasizing.
Yeah, well, he thought the fantasy was real.
But
which is brutal. And then the next one was someone saying that movie was so scary for the homeowners. And I was like, I guess
it sure was.
Anyways, I think we've got enough running for today, and I'm getting really hungry, frankly. So thanks for listening, everyone. We were going to also, I have a big thing on DeepSeek and the AI bubble. But I think it would be
with Comrade Bennett, since he's
our AI specialist.
Yeah.
I have a lot on like global implications, and he'll have more, I imagine, on some more of the specifics and specific theory.
Before we go, did you also see a second AI plane is at the tower?
Fuck! Yeah.
Comrade Bennett in the group chat showing us that, what was it? Alibaba came out with their own thing as well, which also blows OpenAI out of the water. Yeah. So just a little preview for next week.
Yeah, Sam Altman is getting his back blown out, but we will return to this. Thanks for listening, everybody. We greatly appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.